All right, welcome everybody. We are moving into episode 3 of installing PHP on our web server. Things are getting easier. We have 1 or 2 more videos and we will be set up and running with WordPress. So those are exciting times. It's nice to kind of catch up and get something solid out there running. So I won't jump into too much. The last 2 episodes, if you haven't caught them, the first one is setting up the baseline of our server. Yesterday we set up Apache and got it running. And today we're going to get PHP running on it. And we're going to do something a little bit different. We're not going to install it from a regular repository. We're going to build in a new repository where we can get more up-to-date versions of PHP. The current version of Ubuntu that's out there is running on 7.2. something. We really want to be above 7.3. There's a lot of performance enhancements around that. And there's also areas where there's security, and we're concerned about that because we're a couple of revisions behind. I think that we're on 7.4 now, and the most recently, like you can get, like I said, from Ubuntu is a 7.2.4 or something, I believe. So anyway, we're going to go through, we're going to add a repository, we'll install PHP, we'll talk about some extensions that we'll need, and we'll go ahead and do that and get us ready for installing our database tomorrow. So why don't we go ahead and jump in, we'll go over to our screen, and I'll meet you there. All right, I went ahead and logged in, so we're SSH'd into our server. We're already up and running. I know that I'm going to be working in my basic root privileges for a while, so I'm going to sudo bash into this and go ahead and enter my credentials. We're not going to have to do a lot here, but we always start, like we talked about the other day, with an update and an upgrade to see if there's anything out there. So we're going to say apt update and just see if we have any updates. So this looks good. I'm gonna actually open this up. Hopefully you guys can see this. I'm gonna make this screen a little bit bigger for you so that we can see that. All right, so it doesn't look like we have any updates. Let's go ahead and see if we can upgrade anything. It didn't say we were having any packages, but it's not a bad habit to get into, so we don't have anything. So the next thing we're gonna do is if we were to go out and just do a regular install, and I can show you this. So they say apt install, and we're gonna say PHP, and we're not gonna let it, but if we say 7 and then put a dot, and we just look, I'm gonna hit tab, and what you'll see here is when you hit tab twice, it's gonna tell you what all the potentials are. It's kind of like doing a search when you're using apt, if you know what it's called, and you'll see that we have 7.1 and 7.2, but that's really all we have for PHP. Well, we're looking for a 7.3 or 7.4, and we don't have that in our current repository. So one of the ways that we can do that is through updating some and looking through different software properties so that we can add repositories. Now this should already be installed, but let's just make sure. We're going to say apt install software properties and then common. And like I said, it's already installed. Most of the time it will be, and it says that we already have the newest version, which is excellent. So we're going to add a repository here, and we do that by just simply saying add apt and aptitude, right? Repository. And then we're going to tell it which one. So we're going to go PPA, and we're going to put a colon, ONDREJ. And we just want the PHP stuff. All right. So we're going to go in, we'll add this, and when it's going to go through, it'll check it. It says, hey, where do you want to do this? Or am I using Apache? Which one? There's different caveats for that. And we can go ahead and say, yes, we can continue. We're good to go. And what this will do is it'll go out and it'll reach out to grab the links back and forth before the repository. All right, so now that we're good there, let's go ahead and do an update now and see what happens. Now what you'll see, and this is probably the first time that we've seen this because we've been working with new images, but now that we've added a new repository, it says, wait a minute, we have 6 packages that can be upgraded. So 6 full packages out there. So We could get a list and see what those are as it went through there, but I'm not too worried about that. Let's go ahead and do an upgrade on this. So this will take a couple of minutes, but we're going to say apt upgrade. It's not too bad. It's only 6. And let's see what that looks like. And we'll have to do a reboot on this, I think. Even though I didn't see anything on kernel stuff. But who knows? Well, let's go ahead and make sure. Whenever you do an upgrade, I like to reboot just in case there was a kernel update or something in the kernel. So it's going to download and install. Now, this isn't terribly long. It seems to be going through it pretty quickly. So, and if we needed to, we could turn stuff up. So that's perfect. So here we could actually go through and reboot. I don't see anything. Well, maybe. Let's go ahead and do a reboot. It won't hurt anything. And I'll speed through this part so that I'll come back to you when we're logged in. All right, welcome back. So now I think we're ready to go out and do an install of PHP. So here we go. We're gonna actually upgrade our prompt again. So let's go ahead and do that so we can work without going sudo for everything that we do. And we're gonna do an install. So we're gonna apt install PHP, and we know it's 7 dot something. Let's see what's out there now, like we did before. And there's a lot more possibilities. I hit tab twice there and it says, hey, there's 182 possibilities. Before we got it in one little section. We're gonna say yes, just so you can see it. So a lot of what you're seeing here is the PHP, but then you're seeing all this stuff at the end, and these things are extensions to PHP, and you're gonna see common, curl, DBA, dev, all these different extensions. And we're gonna install several of those today. So, but before we do that, we're just going to go ahead and go here, and we see that there is a 7, a 7.1, a 7.2, a 7.23 to 7.4. We're going to go with 7.4. It looks like it's almost latest. It's the latest version of PHP. So we're going to say apt install, if I can talk, apt install PHP 7.4. Excellent, so we're all installed. So let's just double check and make sure that we're running the right version. So we can say PHP-V for version, and it should come back and tell us what we're running. So it says we're running PHP version 7.4.3. So we're good to go. All right, so remember we talked a little bit about extensions. Let's talk about some of the extensions we may need. Now, typically when you're installing extensions, you don't want to spend the time that we're going to spend here today, but we're going to talk about why each one. So whenever you're installing an extension, you can do that through aptitude as well. So we're going to say apt install, and we're going to do at the beginning of this is PHP.7.4. Now you could probably say PHP dash and whatever the extension is, but we want to make sure that we get the actual extension that we're looking for. Sorry, that's PHP 7.4. All right, so the first thing we want to talk about in extensions is we know that we have our common, and the common is installed, but we're just going to make sure. It should say that we don't need anything, and we're already up to date, but we're good to go. You typically, when you just do the PHP by itself, it will install your common. Now we know we're going to need a database to run our WordPress, and I like to use MySQL. There's other options out there, but we want PHP to work well with that. So if you hit the up arrow, it'll actually return the last command that you did. And I'm going to do this a good bit so that it's fast, because we're going to begin the same way every time as we go through these extensions. Now, one of the things that we want to do is support for MySQL. So I'm going to say MySQL. That's one of the things that are out there. That's an extension that we know that we're going to need. Now, as you do this in the future, you could actually say PHP 7.4 dash, let's say, I don't know, XML. We're not installing XML. And you could do space, 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 and it'll work through the whole thing. For this, I'm going to do them one at a time so that we have time to talk about why we're installing each one. All right, so that's good to go. So the next one that we're going to do is actually curl. And curl is a lot like wget. You can go out and it'll grab other web pages. It's almost like a text-based browser in its own way as well, but it's for downloading more. I can download the contents of a web page, or I can download an entire website if I wanted to with curl. So it's not quite a web browser like the W3M that we did yesterday, but it is a text-based way of going out and reaching and browsing around the web and pulling down and downloading files. So we're going to do PHP curl because I know that's something that WordPress uses as well. All right, so the next one we're going to do is GD, and I have no idea what it stands for. I know it's for graphics. Whenever you're using WordPress, this program allows you to basically do cropping and manipulating images, along with iMagick does that as well. So we're going to install the GD extension. And like I said, there's ImageMagick with this, or iMagick, so M-A-G-I-C-K. All right. Our next one's going to be MB string. All right. We want SOAP for anything that we're interacting with, especially if you're installing a store or something like that, you'll want that. And we want zip. We want to be able to manipulate zip files because that's how templates and stuff are uploaded for WordPress. And that's it. We have all of our extensions installed. Now we're going to run some stuff later on with WordPress, and we may have a few other things that we have to kind of clean up on the back end. But for the most part, we're good to go. We have all of our extensions in there, and we have PHP running. So there are a few modifications that we want to make as we go along, though. And you can do that in the php.ini file. So to find the php.ini file is exactly like we did with the Apache. So most of these files are going to be under Etsy because that's where they run. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go over to our Etsy directory, and there should be a PHP directory. Now if I do a listing of this, you'll see for PHP, even though we installed 7.4, there's folders for 5.6, 7.0, 7.1, 7.2, 7.3, and 7.4. Now we're running 7.4, and that's where we want to stay. So we're just going to say 7.4, and we can look into this directory. And right there in front of us, it already knows that we're going to be running PHP, and we have options for Apache. So we're going to go into the Apache folder, and we can look around. So you're going to see a couple of things. Your conf.d is a folder, and you have your php.ini. We're going to be looking at the php.ini. And you can do this in Nano, or you can do this in VI or Vim. I like Vim because this is a fairly lengthy file. And getting around in this file can be a little complicated unless you're used to VI or used to Nano and search capabilities. I like VI because I can search for the line that I want and go update it, and I don't have to scroll through hundreds of lines to get there. So I'm actually going to use Vim, and Vim's just an upgraded version of VI that's kind of color-coded and has some special ways that you can move around that's better than the old days of VI. But I'm going to say php.ini. All right, so we're in here. Now I can hit escape here, and then I can do a / and you'll see that down at the bottom. And the first thing that we're going to update is the max file size that we can upload. By default, I think it's like 1 or 2 megs or something like that. And that really doesn't work for file structures, especially if we're moving imagery and stuff like that, and we're doing headers and WordPress. So we're going to look for upload. and you'll see that, and we're going to say max. And there it is. We have upload max file size. So what we'll do is we'll go over, say insert, and yep, it was 2 meg, and we're going to change this to 32 meg. So I'm just going to insert a 3 here. All right, and then I'm going to hit escape again. Now, when we start talking about what we're posting, what are the sizes of things that we're going to post to our website? Not necessarily like a blog, but if we're posting anything to it, a post is a way that you can go out and upload files or do different things. It's not just regular file sizes. There's lots of things that you could post. But that's the next thing that we want to do is we're going to change the post size. So I'm going to go in here and say post underscore max size. There we go. We're gonna hit insert and let's go make this 48 instead of 8. All right, we're gonna hit escape out of that. And then we're gonna change our memory limit because sometimes our memory can make it really slow and we wanna be able to use more for this for processing. So we're gonna say / again, memory limit. There we go. So now I'm going to hit I to insert, and then we're going to make this 256. All right, we only have a couple more go, and we want some execution times and some variable inputs that we want to change as well. So we're going to go in here and we're going to say max execution. So we're going to search for that, max underscore execution time. There we go. We'll insert, and instead of 30, we're actually gonna make this 600. So a big difference here. All right, escape. We're gonna go into max input for our variables. So we'll say max underscore input underscore var. All right, and you'll see that this is actually commented out, so it's not gonna allow it. So how many outputs can we get for as far as what are the variables and how many will be accepted. So we're going to actually turn this on, and the way that we can do that is we can say insert, oops, insert, and we're going to get rid of that comment and we're going to change this to 3,000 instead of 1,000. All right. And then the last one is our input time, and we saw that show up. It was we were typing before, so we're going to say max underscore input time. There we go. I don't know why I was doing that to me before. I knew that was a setting that was in here. It's just like they're describing it, and I couldn't get to that one. It wouldn't jump to the next one, and usually you can do that. So anyway, we're going to say input. And then we're going to make this one 1,000. All right, so we are all good to go. So we have our php.ini, our configurations updated. So we are good to go from there. So let's go ahead and do a restart of our Apache service. So we'll do just, restart Apache 2. All right, and let's go over to our folders. Remember we had our root folders over here for our web pages. So that's www-html/html. We're going to look at all of this. So we have an index.html and index.old. Let's do a index.php now. All right. So as we go in here now, we'll see we have index.php. All right, so we'll see what order this is. One of the things that you can change is the order that your web server reads things. Does it read HTML first or PHP first? And we'll get into that later on, but it's not going to be really important because everything that we're doing here, we're going to get rid of eventually when we get ready to put WordPress on here. But what I do want to do is start looking at index.php and actually make sure that PHP is working. one of the best ways to do that is installing or creating a file, index.php, and just telling it to give me the info. So the best way to do that is we can go in and we can vim this and say index.php. And you'll see there's nothing in there right now. So if we insert, the first way that you do, you tell a file that it's PHP, is you're going to open this up. We're going to put a question mark here, and we're going to say PHP. And then we're going to go down a few lines, and we're going to close it out. So now we know that we have a PHP document. And all we want to do is get some info. So we can say PHP info and say save. So we can escape. All right. So now we see that we have our permissions are a little bit off. It says that root owns this. It's not www data. And it's we see that our permissions aren't right on some of those things here. We have a couple of them where they're not. So I'm going to go back a level because we're going to have to do this a few times. We'll do it with WordPress and make sure things are good there too. So we're going to do a long listing here, and you'll see that HTML seems to be right, but everything under it isn't. So the best way to do it, and we hit all files, would be just to change owner, -R of everything under it. And we're going to say that we want it to be -data. And then we're going to colon, remember this from yesterday, www-data, because we want Apache to own this. And we're going to say for the directory HTML. All right. So then the next thing we want to do is change a mod, right? And we want that to be recursive as well. And we're going to say that we want it to be 775. And we want that to be on HTML data. So now if I go back to HTML, what you'll see is that it actually hit all the files and fixed them up and gave them the right permissions. It's easier than going through each file individually and doing this. We can just go through one time and it works. So there we go. So let's pull up a browser real quick. And one of the things that we'll do is as we pull that up, we're going to look at what our site says and how we can change it and what order things are. So we're going to go to our website, which is 10.1.0.114 right now. And if you look, it's going to our HTML page. Remember that was blank. So one of the things that we can do here is, if we look this up, is so we know that it's reading HTML before it's reading PHP. Now there's a configuration, like I said, that we can change that, but for now, we're just gonna move index.html over to index.html.temp. So if we bring back our web page and I do a refresh on this, what you should see is that we get our PHP page. So all that means is our server's reading HTML first and then PHP. So if you look, this means that PHP is working. It tells us what our version is. Later on, this is a really dangerous page to be out there. You want to make sure you never have a page like this on your website. It gives away all your paths. It can give away passwords. It'll give away how you log into your database, where it's located, what ports it runs on. So I would never, ever, ever let this stay out here. But this is a way of testing to make sure that everything is working, that the core is there, and that your extensions are loaded, and all that sort of stuff. So now we know this is good. So we're almost set. I'm going to close out of this real quick, and I'm just going to go back over here, and I'm going to say, I'm going to move HTML.temp back to index.html. All right, so that way all that information's gone, and then I'm going to remove index.php. We don't need that. That's a dangerous file. We don't want to forget that it's out there. So we go to ls. We see that we had just index.old and we have index.html. We'll test it one time again just to make sure. All right, and .1. If I can type today, 1.0.114. and you'll see we have our blank page again. So that's everything for today. I really appreciate you visiting the site. I hope this has been helpful. Going through the in-depth way of installing PHP is just instead of doing a regular install and then getting the errors later on. And that's what we're trying to prevent, is doing all the steps step by step and knowing why we do it. If you have any questions or comments or suggestions in ways that we can do this faster or easier, or just tips and tricks, please leave them below in the comments. Subscribe if you like the channel and hit that little bell. That would be great. If you're seeing this on my website, leave comments there as well. I'd love to hear from you.